This is an 85mm 1.8. I love this lens. But this is an 85mm 1.4. So this one, 1.4, must be better, right? Because, I mean, it's a 1.4. Well, that's what I want to find out in this video. Is the lens with a maximum aperture of 1.4 objectively better than a lens with a maximum aperture of 1.8? So should you upgrade to a 1.4? Does it look better? What's the difference in terms of functionality and practicality? And how much blurrier is the background exactly with a 1.4? How much more separation is there compared to a 1.8? Okay, so look, ever since I started studying photography a long time ago, I've been buying mostly 1.8 lenses. Especially back then, 1.4 and 1.2 lenses also were so much more expensive. Like, the difference was huge. And a lot of my projects were also shot on 1.8 or even 2.8 lenses. But nowadays, last 5 years or so, all these budget lenses have been coming out, right? And I mean, they're not super cheap, of course, but you can get a 1.4 lens now for almost the same price as a 1.8 lens. And so, I don't know, maybe it's more worth it to go for a 1.4 lens, right? So let's compare. I have here the Sony 85mm 1.8 and the Kase 85mm 1.4. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice is that the 1.4 lens is a bit bigger and also heavier. But that's completely normal. I actually think that a 1.4 lens is always bigger than a 1.8 lens because you need bigger glass elements to make a 1.4 lens. Not sure if there are any exceptions, let me know in the comments. But other than that, when it comes to build quality, for example, there's not much difference. Both lenses are a combination of plastic and metal in this case, and both feel great and high quality. Now, feature-wise, there is a difference. The Kase lens offers a lot more features. It's newer also. 2 function buttons, an autofocus manual focus switch button, a button to make the aperture ring clickable. That's pretty cool, because I actually like a manual aperture ring. There's a weather sealing gasket, USB-C port for updates, and it's compatible with magnetic filters. And the Sony 85mm, even though I love it, doesn't have any of that. And then the Sony 1.4 does have more features, but it's more expensive. So, you know, when it comes to build quality and features, in my opinion, there's absolutely no reason anymore to only go for the known A brands. But how about that difference between 1.8 and 1.4? Because that's what I wanted to show you in this video. Does it really look better, the blurry background? And how much of an advantage will 1.4 give you in low light, for example? Let's start with that. Okay, so look, a lot of beginners think that you have to go from 1.4 to 2.8 to have one stop of light difference. Double the number to cut the amount of light in half in this case. So, you know, in this case they think that 1.4 will allow double the amount of light to reach the sensor. But that's not true. If you need one stop less light from 1.4, so half the amount, you have to set the aperture to 2.0. If you go to 2.8, that's 2 stops of light difference already. Here you can see what the full stops are. So each step is double or half the amount of light. Now, what does that mean for our 1.8 and 1.4 lens? Well, the difference is actually less than 1 stop. It's 2/3 actually. But that's difficult to visualize, right? So let me show you what that actually means in real life. For example, if you're shooting something with a 1.8 lens at f1.8 and your shutter speed is, let's say, 1/15th of a second, perfect exposure. Well, with a 1.4 lens set at f1.4, you can set the shutter speed at 1/25th of a second for the same perfect exposure. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot, right? But at 1/25th of a second, you'll have a much better chance to avoid a blurry photo, for example, when shooting handheld. 1/15th is, tricky. And same goes for ISO, of course. Instead of using 800, for example, with an aperture of 1.8, you could go for 500 with an aperture of 1.4, which might give you a bit less noise. So it's not a huge difference, and for many of you it won't make much of a difference, but if you're a low light shooter or if you like to capture fast objects, those 2/3 of a stop could actually make the difference between a sharp and a blurry photo, you know? Or a perfectly exposed and an underexposed photo. And look, this is what the difference actually looks like. Same scene, same lighting, this is how much more a 1.4 aperture, sees basically. Okay, so that's the practical and functional side of having a bigger aperture. But what about the look? Does 1.4 look so much different compared to a 1.8? So an 85mm is a portrait lens, right? For most people it is. Of course, you can use it for anything you want. But 1.4 will always give you more separation between background and subject. The background will be a bit blurrier. Now, before I show you how much blurrier a 1.4 is, know that what you're gonna see is also partly the design of the lens. Not every 1.4 lens will look exactly the same at maximum aperture. Different lenses from different brands will look a bit different. But anyway, look, first let me show you the Sony 85mm 1.8 at 5.6. Looks great, right? And this is the Kase 1.4 at 5.6. Just to show you that you might already see a difference, even at the same aperture. Okay, and this is 3.5. And now let's go to 1.8, both lenses. So the Sony is maxed out now. The Kase is not, so let's go to 1.6 and now to 1.4. And there you go, that's the difference between 1.4 and 1.8. And here's some full body shots. So with more distance between me and the camera. But I think you've all noticed by now that when it comes to how it looks, the blurriness of the background, the difference between 1.4 and 1.8 is very, very minimal, right? And so for me, the functional advantage you get, low light, slightly faster shutter speeds, those things are more important when making a decision, because there the difference could make or break a shot, depending on the situation of course. Because cameras these days of course also have tons of other features to help you get the perfect shot. So, does 1.4 look better than 1.8? In my opinion, it doesn't. It just looks a bit different. I think both look great, but the 1.4 will give you that little bit of extra. And some people need it, some people just like it. They want that little bit more separation between subject and background. And some people need it for low light shooting or capturing fast objects. So there you go, that's the difference. I hope this video can help you to decide, because I know it's difficult just from seeing the numbers to know what the difference is between 1.4 and 1.8. So I hope it helps. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.